New Buddha-ware Dhamma Talks. Geoff Hunt presents a talk on some aspect of the Buddha's teaching.
Right, well, good morning to everyone. It's very nice to see the sunshine. It might surprise you that this is the 50th talk or discussion that we've had. 50, which adds up to about a year, doesn't it? So I was surprised when I added up the numbers. I'm soon going to run out of ideas. Then we'll have to start all over again from the beginning. Well, actually, with Buddhism, you can start almost anywhere, as you probably noticed. So last week, we started talking about worrying and how that is a hindrance. In fact, in the Buddhist doctrine, you have the 5 hindrances to following your practice, which are desire or wanting more desire, ill will, laziness, worry, there it is, worry, and doubt. Buddha attaches a lot of importance to worry and what a powerful hindrance it is. We can get carried away by worry and not even think that we are worrying. But as we shall see, there are lots of symptoms of worrying, even if one isn't aware of it. And the whole key to our approach is to become aware of it. Become aware of it. So last week, we sort of gave an overview. This week, we're going to put a bit more leverage on how we could consider, be aware of worry in such a way as to make fruitfulness out of it, push forward our wisdom and our peace. We can't do that unless we are aware. So what I've done is just put together a few important points, which Paul is going to put up in a moment. We're going to share these ideas with you. But this is basically last week's discussion. And we'll then go on to a slightly different approach, the same thing. So if Paul would put up the shared document. It works. I can't see it myself yet. So there it is, right. Nothing missing from that. No, it's all there, right. Maybe if we could zoom away from it a bit. Is it possible to make it a bit smaller so we get all the text in? No, can't do that. Okay, no problem. Okay, just some major points that to keep in mind, something for you to contemplate when you're sitting at home. You can just read through this and think about it, consider it, maybe bring it back as a question or as an example or whatever. And what you're doing then is increasing your wisdom, you're increasing your understanding of yourself, of which there is nothing more important. Right, the first thing to understand in approaching worry is to make some sort of quantum leap if one can do it. Well, one can do it because we are human beings, so we have the ability to be aware. So the rule is, if it's a rule, is to attend not to the object of the worry, but to how the worrying feels to me. There's a difference there. It's like the difference between looking at a tree or touching the tree, cutting branches off the tree. The tree is our object. But if I sit down and I think or feel, or I'm aware of how I feel about the tree, so that it's no longer the tree that I'm now interested in, it's how I think or feel or respond to the tree. So that sounds like an easy shift to make, and it's at the heart of mindfulness. And it's not particularly easy to do because we tend to get carried away by objects, if you like, by things which take our attention, or in the case of worry, actually fearfulness, fear of something or other. Worry is always future oriented. It's like pre-experience, as I sometimes call it. That is trying to experience something before you've actually experienced it. So it's a pre-experience, and it has some sort of threat in it, and off goes the worry. Now, when you're doing that, you're actually taking a particular problem as you see it as your object, but what you're not doing is thinking about how do I feel about doing this. So it's like jumping up a level, because you're not paying attention to the tree, you're paying attention to the tree. Sounds a little odd at first, doesn't it? Because it's a turning inwards. So the first thing, the very first law of mindfulness, if there was such a thing, would be, in this case, to attend not to the object of the worry, e.g., will I lose my job? Will I be able to pay the rent this week? Will my spouse who is sick get worse or not? Etc. These are objects of worry. They're somehow out there. Meanwhile, I am also suffering because I've attached to that object and I don't like it, and I don't want it, and I'm thinking all the terrible things it could do to me, right? So the key is not to attend to the object of worry, but to the inner experience of worry. I hope you're all with me on this, because without this, nothing else really counts as mindfulness. It won't be able to help you as much. It's pushing your mind up to a different level, where it's watching its own reactions. When it becomes aware of its own reactions, the reactions tend to die down. And then one can have a sensible response rather than a panic or suffering the thought of something. So don't attend to the object of worry, but to the inner experience of worry. You know, if you could read that and grapple with that 100 times, and then the penny drops, you will have got it. Right, 2. Worry is the suffering of pre-experience. Now, if you think about worry, perhaps we are narrowing down the definition, but it's future-oriented. It's about what might happen, generally. That's what we're interested in today, anyway. Pre-experience, that is, I'm trying to guess what it will be like if, e.g., I lose my job. And I'm worrying about it. Not all concern that you have is future-oriented. Some is past-oriented. That is, feeling regret about something that you said or did or whatever. But we're not dealing with regret or remorse. We're dealing with worry. Worry is projecting outwards. Is trying to have the experience before one's had the experience. Which, when you think about it, is already a little bit suspicious. Why do I do that? Well, it's not, you're not choosing to do it. Your mind is in that track. That is what it is accustomed to doing. It's looking for a problem, it's creating a problem, and it's looking for a solution to the problem. You know, this is okay, this is understandable, it's okay, up to a point. But mindfulness is taking a quantum leap. Because now it is your mind itself that is the object of study. Not the things that the mind usually pays attention to. Okay, so if that's what it is, instead of projecting into a horrible future, which may never come, to rest your mind in the present moment. The moment you start projecting into the future, will this happen, will that happen? Right, you're trapped now. If you can only be aware that that is happening and let it go and say, yeah, but how do I feel now? Then you realize that how you feel now is largely up to you. So bring your mind away from the future thing that's you're fearful of, and to this very moment. What is going on this very moment? What is going on this very moment could be that you're sitting in a chair, meditating or trying to meditate. And your state of mind is what is important. What is going on in your mind? What is going on in your mind, you realize it's attaching and clinging to things which are generally not things that you would want to happen. That makes it worry. So try to say, okay, it is actually this moment, this very ongoing moment now, as I'm sitting here in front of a laptop, talking to our friends, that is what is going on now. That is present moment. And I have feelings about that. And they're good feelings. You know, your feelings of with friends, friendship, togetherness, it's sharing of worries, you know. So at this moment, at this very moment, as I'm speaking to you and we're speaking to each other, that is what we should be paying attention to. And let go of, and then we would have to let go of the worry. See how it works, because you can't hold on to both at the same time. Okay, 3, let go of self-judgment. When we worry about something, generally we are putting ourselves in a poor light, or we're thinking, why was I so stupid? Or why did I believe him when he said that? Or something of that kind. And I think, what is the matter with me? Why am I always judging? This is putting another layer on top of what you already perceive as a problem, because now it's a problem that has a self-judgment attached to it. So now it's worse. So let go of that. No self-judgment. It is what it is. That's it. We don't need for your mind to allow judgments to add on to it. All of this is a skill, of course. The Buddha talks about all this as a skill. It looks easy enough, but we all know that it requires some practice. So that is why you can't come and listen to this once and then think, oh yeah, I get it, very clever. That's not going to work. You've actually got to do this. You've got to struggle with it a bit. Well, more than a bit, actually. Struggle with it a bit. And gradually, over time, you will start to think differently about things, feel differently about things, and be differently. Okay, so that's the self-judgment. All of these are important points, right, that we're just listing here, just running through some of the things we talked about last week. So worry necessarily has the dimension of excluding everything else. I don't know if you notice, you have to understand yourself that when you're worrying, you're focused on that one thing. Will I lose my job, for example? The mind is now excluding everything else. It's lost everything else. It's zooming in on something that is actually quite painful, and it's not even noticing that it's painful, or that it is itself generating the pain. It's as though the pain is attached to the object of which is the problem. But it's not. The pain is separate. You are generating the pain, or you're allowing the generation of the pain. That makes sense? It's a very powerful thing, if you can do it, to detach the object from the feelings about it, especially if they are bad, destructive feelings. So one good piece of advice here is, when you become aware of that, which you can only do if you're practicing mindfulness, become aware of that, is to switch your mind. Say, right, I see what's happening here. Switch your mind to something completely unconnected. Just a little bit of advice. Okay? Switch your mind to something completely unconnected, what is worrying you, and put in its place a positive thought, a happy thought, a constructive thought, fruitful thought, one that has peace in it, one that sees things on a wider scale. We live, we die, and when we're alive, we're going to make the most of it in terms of peace and wisdom and compassion. So when you switch to something unconnected, the mind is pretty puny, really. It can't deal with two things at the same time. So if you bring something in that's unconnected, it'll push out the worry. but you might have to keep on repeating that. Okay, worry tries to control the uncontrollable. And that's what makes it so painful, because it can't succeed. So it goes on banging its head. How different it would be if I could say to myself, oh, I see what's going on here. My mind is trying to control things that can't really be controlled. So what is the point of that? Why don't I just let go of that? Why don't I accept some level of uncertainty? That is what it is. Uncertainty is uncertainty. There's not much you can say about it. It means you don't know what is going to happen. And not knowing is fine. It doesn't put you at risk, because you're already suffering from your own misguiding of your mind. 6, worry is what I sometimes call a dilemma prison. We tend to cast things in terms of a dilemma in a worry, not always, but it's often a dilemma. Dilemma is where if I do X, I'll be in trouble. But if I don't do X, I'll be in trouble. How am I going to get out of this? It's a dilemma with only 2 horns. Whichever way you go, the horn is going to stick into you and cause a lot of pain. So you worry about that. Well, guess where this came from? This is a construction of your own mind. So it's like going into a prison cell and then looking back and you see 2 doors. One that says way out, and the other that says, no, this is the way out. And you go back and forth between the 2. What you're not doing is turning around and seeing that it's open all the time. All the time, all you have to do is turn around and walk away from those 2 doors. The one that says, this is the way, and the other one that says, no, this is the way. Turn around, let go of the 2 doors, and you'll find the sun is shining and you can walk away. None of these things come automatically. They come through knowing about mindfulness. It comes about having a teacher, becoming a sangha of group of people working together, and it takes patience and time. After a year or 2, you will see how transforming it can be to your life. Okay, so that's the dilemma prison. Look for an alternative. You're stuck in a dilemma. It's either A or it's not A. Well, there are alternatives. You just got to turn around and look. 7, write it down. Often helps, because it's putting the apparent problem outside. Write it down, right? It's now out there. I've now taken it out of my mind, and it's on that piece of paper where it can jolly well stay. Right? Perhaps share it with a trusted person, or maybe not. And instead of trying to find the solution, of which there is no solution because there is in fact no problem, look for a plan. A plan is a response to a situation that does need some attention. So it's not about denying that there are problems. What it's saying is, look at problems in a different way. Don't enhance the problems. Don't see them in this narrow-minded way. Turn them into something that needs a plan. A plan is neutral. It's detached. That's the word. It's detached. I can draw up a plan and not get excited or upset about it. That's the way to do it, because you will need plans in life, but it's insidious. So a plan can easily turn into worry if you're not careful. Okay, thanks for Paul. We'll take that down. If you're still there, yes, thank you. Okay. Right, assuming you can still hear me. Just want to now quickly run through another way of looking at basically the same thing. Look at it this way. There are three kinds of exercise we can do to develop our mindfulness. Remember, mindfulness is a development. It's not an event. It's a development. You've got to do it and keep on doing it, and then you will see the change. Okay, so there are 3 levels of letting go. There's the bodily level, there is the emotional level, and there's the thinking or intellectual level. And worry pokes his nose into all 3 of these, usually at the same time. So let's take the bodily signs. We know that we do know this already, that when we are worrying a lot, it shows up in the body. The body is worrying. You think that the worry is in your mind. It's in your body, right? So just to give some examples, I think of myself, by the way, in a large part of my life. Frowning, nail biting, teeth grinding, tongue pushing, lips compressing, leg shaking, shoulder contracting, and then in places in the body that you don't have immediate access to. When you're suffering, your heart is suffering. You may notice a flutter. Your stomach is. So people develop gastric problems, ulcers in the stomach from stress, from worrying too much. The gut is having a heart problem. It's either running out too fast or it's getting stuck. It's connected with stress. Idiopathic pain, that is feeling a pain which doesn't seem to have, as far as the doctor can see, doesn't seem to have a physical root. It's funny how a lot of pains disappear when one learns how to be mindful about the issues that arise in life. So the body, be aware of your body and be aware of the suffering of your body and be aware of how much your body needs and wants peace, rest. It wants rest. When you're worrying, there is no rest. There is no rest for your body either. Don't think you get away with it. Your body is suffering too, even if it's not clear. So, best way to deal with this is a body scan, which we've done before. Right. So, body scan. First of all, this is what I would suggest, and perhaps we can come back to it again next week as well, is to start a body scan by giving yourself a deep sigh 3 times. You think about it, sighing is a release of tension, of stress. Why don't we do it more often? If you're going to start a body scan, just release that tension in the body. Okay? So, sigh, S-I-G-H, a few times. Now, there'll be a lot of tension around the neck. So, swallow 3 times. And then you realize that the swallowing muscles, which you hardly ever notice, are also a little bit tense. Swallow 3 times, swallow some water. When people are giving talks like me, and maybe we're just a little bit tense, why is it that we always like to sip water? See, I did something there, and I noticed what I did, but I can't really describe it. It was like a sudden release of tension in the muscles in the throat. These are all bodily changes. You should have some control over your body. Your body is not just baggage you carry around, you know, and which you doll up when you want to look nice. There's a bodily dimension to everything that you do. Okay, so swallow 3 times, then start a scan. There's an awareness going through your body. Awareness of your face, awareness of your throat, awareness of your shoulders, awareness of your hands. In each case, just releasing the energy. Okay, that's the body scan. If you're interested in the book that I wrote for you, by the way, on page 93, you will see the body scan. Do some physical exercises. Instead of lying slumped in that chair, worrying about something, Go out through the door. Go outside. Something is going to change in the body when you go outside. It is now seeing different things. It's now feeling different things. It now feels the breeze on its face, etc., or whatever. Or it hears children playing, or children fighting, whatever it is. The brain has got to make a switch. And it'll switch. So that just going outside will move you away from the worry. Okay, so this is all bodily stuff. Breathing exercises are always good. Before I come to this session, in fact, every morning, I go outside. I do 20 minutes of exercise, which I've stolen from a yoga book. Make sure I get all the main muscles working there. And then I do some deep breathing. I breathe out as much as I can to make space for some oxygen. Breathe out until I'm strangling myself, and then breathe in. No, I'm breathing in a lot of extra oxygen now. Now the body likes that, some oxygen, some energy on the way. If you just do that for 20 to 25 minutes, no, well, the breathing part, and actually you've only got to do it 4 or 5 times, you will feel brighter, more energetic, and less worrying. In fact, you may say to yourself, what's all that worrying stuff about? Forget that. Okay. So, you are your body in some ways. In other ways, you're not your body, but you can't neglect your body. When you're suffering, your body is suffering. When your body is suffering, you are suffering. Okay? That's not to say that you are exclusively your body, because that leads us into a little trap, which we'll talk about some other time, probably in the root session. Okay, emotion. So the first series of things one has to be aware of in mindfulness is body. Second is emotion. I'm not quite sure why so little attention is given to emotion in the Buddhist texts, but modern Buddhists are talking about it a lot more. And maybe it's because the Buddha was himself a very cool person, so maybe he wasn't very emotional, I don't know. But we know what it means, you know, to suffer emotion and also to enjoy emotion. So if we do a body scan, why don't we do an emotion scan? Can you do that? Is that conceivable? I think so. So be aware of how you feel emotionally, particularly feeling anxiety, fear, sadness, irritation, a low spirit, weariness, low self-esteem, anger, indignation, humiliation. All of this feeds into that worry, doesn't it? It's like a bucket of excrement, right? Just adding fuel to the misery. Well, what are we going to do about it? What we're going to do about it is mindfulness. We're going to detach those emotions from what I perceive to be the problem. Can that be done? You probably think at the moment, no, you can't do that. That's because we're absolutely convinced that everything that comes into my mind is somehow attached to things in the outside world. But it's not. They can be detached. And when they're detached, your mind has some peace. Okay, so be aware of the emotion. Don't hide it. Give it a label, if you like, and say to yourself, this is not me. I am not irritation. I am not anger. I am not sadness. Right? That is not me. I am watching those things in my mind, but I am the witness of those things. The witness is not the one, is not the object that you're observing. So detach. It's a big word, isn't it, when you think about what is involved in detaching. I'm going to have to stop soon. So again, if this is useful to you, well, hopefully, then we can talk about it again next week. Okay, so how do we turn that around? How do we turn the emotion around? Well, quite easily, actually. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen master, always used to say, smile. If you don't feel like smiling, smile. And somehow you'll start to feel happier. Weird, isn't it? Say thank you more often. Say to yourself, I am grateful for this. Whatever it is, I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for friends. I'm grateful for X, Y, Z. Say it to yourself. Believe it. And then you'll feel the detachment of the emotions. All those emotions that were crushing you will tend to move away or dissolve. Okay. This is not me. My anger is not me. My anger is something that could do a lot of damage to me and to others. There has to be a cool, responsive approach to the things that, from our perspective, go wrong in life. Finally, this is another one that's not mentioned enough, I think, probably because our culture has changed since the Buddha's time, which is not surprising, to 2,000 years. And that is the thinking or reasoning part of our being. I often think that we suffer from something in the West we could call thinkism. Thinkism is that every problem, I can think through it and solve the problem. Doesn't work most of the time. Thinking, what is thinking? And how is thinking different from emoting or the emotional? Well, thinking is largely verbal. That is, I'm thinking in terms of words. But actually, all three layers, the bodily, the emotional, and the intellectual, are all they're relatively separate, but they're really bound together. So you can't separate them completely. But you can be aware that I'm doing a lot of thinking here, because there are a lot of words whizzing about, and you could write them down. You would see that there's a lot of thinking going around in your mind. It's not necessarily fully emotional. It's like part of the mind is trying to calculate, trying to reason, trying to find a solution. And all the time it is working with an assumption. The assumption is that all problems can be resolved by thinking. What a blunder. That is so wrong. That is so wrong. Not all things, not all problems, so-called problems, can be resolved by thinking them through. You're just getting into that dilemma prison. And you can sit there and think as much as you like, but you haven't noticed there's a wide open space behind you. So thinking is another thing we have to deal with mindfully. So remind yourself to attend not to the object of worry, but the mind's response to the object. Remind yourself that not all problems can be reasoned away. Some can only be dissolved. Remind yourself of the possibility of a detached plan, which is helpful reasoning. And a reminder that's always there. It's always my last help is, or should be my first help, is breathing and paying attention to your breathing. You're not breathing for an aim or an objective or something of that kind, or because it's something that yoga people do, or all sorts of silly reasons for doing things. Just do it. See, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think about Buddhist teaching is all the time in the background, there's a voice talking to you, saying, "Don't just listen to me. Do it. Do the breathing. Pay attention to the in-breath, the out-breath, how they're subtly different from each other. Do it. Then ask yourself, why am I doing this? It doesn't work, etc., etc." See, I see now, very clearly why, when I was in Japan and the Zen master told me to go pick up pine needles. He could see I was the sort of person that wanted a reason for everything. So when I went back and said, "Why are we picking up pine needles?" he just shook his head and pointed back to the pine needles. There is no reason for picking up the pine needles. When you're picking up pine needles, you are picking up not pine needles. Pay attention to that. Right. Thinkism is a trap. Of course, we need to think, we need to reason, but we put it all out of proportion when we think that life's problems can be solved by thinking through them. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much.
New Buddha Way lets go of East and West and starts afresh in the life we have now. For more information, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.